Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile follows the case of Ted Bundy, exploring how he manipulated the public as well as those close to him whilst committing some of the most brutal murders in history. The film is based on Elizabeth Kloepfer's book titled The Phantom Prince: My Life with Ted Bundy, and this film has been praised for its accuracy to the real-life case, so we're going to delve into the details here and investigate what it gets right and what it doesn't. Hello, my name's Emily, welcome to Bloody Good. This is Fact vs Fiction, a show where we look at horror films that claim to be based on a true story and look at just how accurate they actually are. The director of this film, Joe Berlinger, also created the documentary Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes, so he has some skin in the game when it comes to the Bundy case. He said this film is authentic to the case. That was important to me. This is not a documentary, obviously, but the historical beats of Ted Bundy are very accurate in the movie. Berlinger faced some criticism upon the film's release due to the casting of Zac Efron as Bundy. He said Efron was his first and only choice, but a lot of people were concerned that the film was attempting to make Bundy seem like some kind of sex symbol. Berlinger said, "Bundy had this appeal. What I'm portraying is the psychological power that he had over others, and Ted lured women to their deaths because he gave off this vibe of being trusted." And he's not wrong. As the film shows, there were flocks of women who lined up for gallery seats in the 1979 trial. So many of these women just couldn't fathom that he'd done such awful things, and some even asked him for his autograph on his own wanted posters. It might seem ridiculous, but there really was a lot of attention on this case, and Bundy's charm had convinced a lot of people of his innocence. Liz, played by Lily Collins, was Bundy's longtime girlfriend and did really believe he was innocent. I think since the film is based on her memoir and therefore her belief that Ted was innocent throughout the arrests and trials, the film makes a good choice not to actually show any of the murders until those last few minutes where the truth is revealed to her. In a way, I think this is a great choice because it's not glorifying the crimes by putting them to screen, but I also feel like if we really wanted a film about Liz and her relationship with Bundy, then there shouldn't have been so much focus on what he was up to when she wasn't around. I think the conflicting perspectives of this film is one of its biggest issues. According to her memoir, in real life, Bundy was emotionally abusive, and Liz did notice some strange things along the way. After the unsolved kidnappings in 1974 in Washington, she saw the police composite in the newspaper, who was named Ted, and she thought it looked a lot like her very own Ted, who also drove a Volkswagen. News reports described the suspect as having used a crutch to knock out a victim, and she recalled seeing crutches in Bundy's home. After this, she called the police, but she lost her nerve and she hung up. A month after that, abductions began happening in Utah just after Bundy moved to Salt Lake City for his studies. This prompted Liz to call the police again. And the police actually clarified that they'd already cleared Bundy, but Liz continued to think about things she'd seen, including plaster of Paris in his desk drawer, which would explain the arm cast the suspect had been described as having. He justified having this by saying, "A person never could tell when he was going to break a leg." She also reportedly saw a hatchet under the passenger seat of his car, and he took a crowbar from her house. In the film, we spend much of the runtime watching Liz denying the accusations and believing Bundy when he says he has nothing to do with the crimes that are being committed. Then towards the end, we hear her express guilt because she reveals that she made the phone call to the police all those years ago, and she believes that this phone call is the reason that he's on trial, instead of, the fact that he actually did do all this awful stuff. Berlinger said he purposefully left these earlier suspicions out of the film because "I want the audience to invest in the relationship between Zac and Lily and to believe that relationship so that by the end of the film, when she finally holds him accountable, I wanted the audience to also feel the same level of disgust that she's feeling, because for the first half of the movie, you were almost lulled into a sense of, well, maybe he's not such a bad guy." And I get the sentiment there, but it's definitely misplaced. We all know who Ted Bundy was, and making the relationship between the two of them seem more believable is not going to make me forget what Bundy did. It's factual. No matter how convincing Zac Efron may play the innocence, we ultimately know the truth already. So I think that idea is a bit silly personally, because at no point while I was watching did I think, maybe all the real life stuff is actually wrong and he was innocent after all, because their dynamic just feels so real in this film. There's definitely some flair in the film to add a bit of drama. In the film, Ted and Liz go to a pound to look at dogs, and one of them barks viciously at Ted once he gets close. This didn't happen, but Berlinger included it as his own interpretation of having some clues along the way in lieu of Liz's suspicions. In the film, Bundy repeatedly refers to the book Papillon by Henry Charrier, which is about a man who is imprisoned for murder and is obsessed with escaping. Bundy reads this book and it gives him hope, and he passes it on to Liz during a visit. This didn't happen in real life either, but it was added to mirror Bundy's own situation while in prison. Haley Joel Osment's character Jerry was also invented for the film. While in her memoir, Liz mentions she eventually confided in a man named Hank who she met at an AA meeting, Jerry is not representative of this man. He's simply an addition for narrative purposes in the position of pulling Liz out of her obsession with Bundy. I also don't think the film delves enough into Liz's alcoholism. We see her having drinks and smoking a fair amount, but it's definitely not to the degree that it actually affected her life. Now for some realism. It might seem far-fetched that Bundy jumped out of a second-floor window to escape, but that really happened. While acting as his own attorney, he really was allowed access to the courthouse library without any cuffs or restrictions. He used the opportunity to jump out of the window and make a run for it. And he was recaptured 8 days later, like the film shows. And he also escaped a second time, like the film shows too. He cut a square out of the ceiling of his jail cell and wiggled his way into the crawl space above. What the film doesn't show is that Bundy had been preparing for this for approximately 4 months, and he lost roughly 35 pounds so that he could fit through the crawl space easier. At the time, he looked gaunt, but this isn't shown in the film. He escaped while most of the jail staff were home on Christmas break. He piled books under his covers to make it look like he was asleep in bed, and it apparently took guards until noon the following day to notice he was gone. This escape would prove to be fatal, as he committed some of his most savage murders in Florida after this escape. The courtroom sequence seems very dramatic and unbelievable at some points, but a lot of that dialogue was condensed from the actual court transcripts and is accurate to the real case. And as the end credits roll, we are shown some of the real footage that mirrors a lot of the courtroom scenes included in the film. When Judge Edward D. Cowart, played by John Malkovich in the film, handed down Bundy's death sentence, he did indeed say the words from the film's title, calling Bundy extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile. But another scene of creative liberty taken with the story is the final scene between Ted and Liz. Kloepfer's memoir describes their final conversation as a phone call that was more ambiguous than the film encounter, where the real Ted didn't dramatically give a sign he was a killer through the writing on the window. According to Kloepfer, Bundy never admitted his guilt, but he said, "There is something the matter with me. I just couldn't contain it. I fought it for a long, long time. It got too strong." When she asked him to clarify, he responded, "Don't make me say it," and the phone call ended. Berlinger said, "She felt he was telling her the truth. She took it as a total admission, but it was a phone call. I didn't find that very dramatic." So he bolstered the drama by putting them face to face, albeit with the glass between them, and Bundy breathed on the glass and wrote hacksaw in the fog. That was just for dramatic effect, it definitely didn't happen. Also during this phone conversation, Kloepfer asked Bundy if he ever tried to kill her, and he reportedly said he once closed the damper on her chimney so that smoke couldn't escape. But again, this wasn't included because it didn't fit the narrative of the film, where Berlinger wants you to question if he really did all these awful things. We've touched on some inaccuracies, but now I'm going to talk about the views from someone who was actually involved with the case who did not enjoy this film. Bob Deacle, one of the prosecutors during the Bundy case, has remarked that the film should instead be called extremely inaccurate, shockingly distorted, and warped, due to its many mischaracterizations. He went on to name several things the film got wrong, including the arrest of Bundy in Pensacola, where he punches an officer. In real life, he escaped the officer's grasp and ran, and then resisted violently, and the officers subdued him by pistol whipping him. He also claims the search warrant for Bundy's teeth impressions was really inaccurate. In the film, a bunch of officers essentially run in on Bundy and pin him down while the impressions were made. But in real life, a warrant was read to him, and he voiced opposition, but ultimately didn't resist. Bundy proposing to Carol Ann Boone did happen, but not at that particular court phase. It happened at a later date. And the whole, all you have to do is stand up in a Florida courtroom and say I do stuff is nonsense. At the real court, there was a notary who signed the marriage license when Bundy pronounced them man and wife. Overall though, I think the film finds most of its accuracy in the courtroom. Since the trial was televised and there is a plethora of actual hard material to work from, it would be hard to change a lot of that without any criticism. But where I think the film loses its credibility is the changes regarding Liz's early suspicions and the general tonal changes throughout the film that try to make you second guess yourself about Bundy's innocence when we all know what he did. It could have taken a more investigative approach like David Fincher's true crime film Zodiac did, or it could have really leaned on the real chaos of the courtroom and made a convincing drama like Gregory Hoblet's fictional Primal Fear. But Berlinger instead chose to tell this story a bit jumbled up from differing perspectives and rushing through or just ignoring key moments of the story to prop up his own made-up additions. I think it took a big swing, but ultimately missed. If you've got any interest in the case, you're better off watching Berlinger's actual documentary, Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes, or The Deliberate Stranger, a 2-part television miniseries from 1986 which followed the Bundy case. Zac Efron's performance is also highly debated. A lot of people think he was perfect for the role, and a lot of people think he played a caricature of Bundy rather than a realistic version. I think he definitely managed to capture the strange charm and charisma that Bundy did have in real life. And I think he managed to have that charm and whatnot on the surface, but you could see an undercurrent of violence and scheming that unsettles you as you watch. But equally, once the footage of the real Bundy plays over the credits, you can't help but feel like someone else could have maybe played the role a little bit better. Ultimately, I'm going to give the film an accuracy rating of C. The accuracy of the courtroom portion of the film doesn't outweigh the many creative liberties that were taken in an attempt to force the audience to think a certain way about Bundy. But what do you think of extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile? Do you think it presents Ted Bundy too positively, or do you think it's an honest reflection of how he actually portrayed himself at the time? Let me know in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts about all the videos we put out. And I also want to give a special shout out to our two members, Roan the Hero and Phantom Crow. We really appreciate your support, and if you'd like to support us, you could consider becoming a member for exclusive polls and posts as well as input on videos coming up. If you're a horror fan, you might want to consider subscribing and checking out our other videos. I have a series where I compare horror books to their film adaptations, and Montgomery covers the behind the scenes of some of the most iconic horror films that we all know and love. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, check out our other fact versus fiction videos, which are linked on your screen right now. In the meantime, I've been Emily, this has been Bloody Good, thank you so much for watching.